The structural and cultural nature of masculine norms require intervention beyond just go to therapy. Effective change might involve psychological work, little self compassion, but also group based, peer led models that provide rational relational meaning.
I don't know. Today I was told this is finally where this podcast becomes the alpha male podcast, so I came prepared. And as alpha males, we can solve any problems you have. So let's confront your troubles.
And make conscious the unconscious. And
This is Josh.
this is Santi. Welcome to this session in the Mind Quest.
So, thinking about male therapy and male problems is intrinsically connected to this idea of what is it to be masculine or what is it to be a man. So today, we're going to talk a little bit about that. We're going to talk about why therapy doesn't always answer to those things that come with being a man. We will also talk a little bit about things like advertising and why you see that influencers like that actually draw people into them. One of the questions that we talked about at the beginning was, sure, like, they're not perfect, but there has to be something that this guy is doing that is making people follow him. These people have to be getting something out of it. So, linking this kind of to therapy, to emotional support, to community support, we figured it would be a good way to bring it all together and have an exploration on therapy for me.
Yeah, so this is quite an interesting topic because, according to some researchers like Vogel and Seider, and a couple more, there is a direct relationship between masculine models and roles and how it's counterintuitive to look for help and therapy showing conflict in this regard.
Yes, so again, first we should probably say, this is not like a machination of the evil capitalists or patriarchy. This is the result of a history of historical development and social advancement, right? And the result of the social development and social historical issues is that in 2025, a lot of the ideas that are owned by masculinity, a lot of the things that are sort of implied when somebody says, I'm a man, tend to be in conflict with the things that, as human beings, can help us heal from emotional trauma, from stress, from, I don't know, from the issues of everyday life. And obviously, mental health or mental illness would go there as well.
So,
However, that doesn't mean that there is no way to do it. So that's also kind of the idea here. There are things like group therapy and peer-led groups that seem to have a better, one, retention rate, and two, effectiveness than traditional individual go to therapy and that will fix you kind of thing.
yeah, that's exactly the thing. So, these guys, the researchers, I mean, they talked of this idea of traditional masculinity. And it's not just a preference, apparently, but a structural barrier to seek for help. They also somehow show that men are not monolithic. I don't really understand what they mean by this, being monolithic. And that change is possible, as you said, uh, but they're exposing some after therapy evidence of men being able actually to embrace more relational vulnerable identities, and especially that the so-called clinical approach is possible in a community-based peer-led work environment in a sort of tribal array. So we need to
Yeah,
work that way somehow.
yeah. But this is very interesting because like I'm a therapist and a psychologist and all of the things. Like I grew up like in a family full of women, and even then, like to me, it feels really uncomfortable when I go to therapy and they say, "Oh, you have to be vulnerable." It makes me uncomfortable, and I think it has to do in part with my identity as a man, but I think it also has to do with a how do I say this in a nice way? The same way that it is difficult for a lot of men to understand or see things from the perspective of women, I think it is also difficult for a lot of women to see and understand things from the perspective of men. And obviously, um, in in therapists as a general group, women are overrepresented. There are a lot more female therapists than there are male therapists. So I think this is maybe one of those examples, right? I think, like I said before, even if we spoke in the first session, I think like I have all the answers. The answers are not the solution. Well, you need to find the question. But to be able to help you find the question, you have to be able to have some level of understanding or empathy uh, regarding the client's specific life history, right? And I think, again, you don't have to be a man to give therapy to a man. You don't have to be a woman to give therapy to a woman. But I think it would also be very naive and disingenuous to say that there is no influence of your therapist's gender in your experience of therapy, right? There is definitely a layer of connection. There is definitely a layer of rapport. There is definitely a layer of operational knowledge that your therapist will have or lack, depending on their gender and their life experiences around that gender. Here I can give another curious example, right? Because of what I just said earlier, because I grew up in families surrounded by women, because women are overrepresented in mental health, this means that a lot of, literally every single one of my supervisors through my whole career has been a woman. So a lot of the things that I've been good at and that I learned at have to do with the way women do therapy. So curiously, even after 10 years of being a therapist, it is still easier for me to work in therapy with women than it is with men. Because the things I learned, the knowledge that I use, is still biased in some way. So, again, this awareness lets me work with all of that, but again, we have to sort of be honest about these biases that everybody has, and this is not a failure of character. This is just the way people work. And in many ways, it is accepting the differences what actually lets us help people, meet them when they are, help them the way they need to be helped. When we think of men as people that need to be helped, this would be okay. So instead of us trying to say, okay, oh, you need to be more vulnerable, oh, you need to be more connected to I don't know, to your inner child or whatever shit like that, let's talk to the person and see, okay, so for you, like, how do you see yourself? What role do emotions play in your life? Do they matter to you? No, what matters to me are results. Oh, okay. So let's talk about results. Well, why are they so important? We're talking about feelings, but don't think about it. Why are they so important? And we go on, right? So, again, these are things that is very difficult to become aware of because we normally don't think about this. We will go through life thinking, okay, how is my role as a man affecting my behavior as I order a burger at Wendy's? Like, no, we just go through life. But if you are a professional providing a service, if you are a client looking for help that actually suits your needs, we have to be honest about these things. And we have to realize that not everybody is the same. So, like I said before, for example, something that has been seen in terms of working with men specifically, is that group approaches, again, no, if you get a group of people and you do exactly the same you would do in individual therapy, but with a lot of people, you didn't actually change what you needed to change. You just apply the same thing to more people. So when I say group work, I mean group that from the ground up has been designed to incorporate the knowledge, the experiences, and the sort of life, what they can say about their life of every single person in the room. Very different to me leading the room and telling you, okay, guys, so we're gonna journal so we can all feel better. Like, no, I'm doing something I would do therapy just in a group. So one of those first elements is thinking of every person of the group as an agent of healing. Right? So when we said a peer-led support group, this is what I mean. That yes, maybe I'm a therapist and I have all the knowledge, but it's really your guys' experiences and it's really your guys' ideas and opinions that is building the support for every one of us, really, because ideally I am part of the group as well. That is building the support. So this approach, if you think about it, also means that now we're listening to every person. Now we're really going to what matters to you. So I don't care. I don't care if maybe I'm not a big fan of gay people and you're here talking about your gay people, but sure, you know what? Sure, I'm going to support you, the person that's here. So this is what I think. And lo and behold, a lot of the time, it turns out people are really good at helping each other, even if they don't agree with whatever they are doing. Because we are very good at empathizing with the person that is right in front of us. So once there is somebody there, it's very easy to say, okay, you know what, let me help you even if I don't. I'm super careful with you. So that's one thing. So it's when the therapy doesn't work, if that it needs to be adjusted to work with different group of people. And men are a typical group of people in therapy. So yeah. Yeah, I think I usually I think that's good. Yeah.
Well, so this gets me into a lot of doubts here. Uh,
Mm,
you know, when I started this research,
mm,
I thought I knew what traditional masculinity was.
mhm,
And I used to think that I am a traditional masculine man.
mhm.
But apparently, according to these guys behind the text,
Mhm.
I'm not. And yes, I do
Okay.
remember the chat we've got on people come first, not the archetype. But
Yes. Yes.
I think this is confusing. It actually gave me some sort of comfort feeling, like when you already know that you are some kind of guy. Yeah. No, no, no. I am traditional. I like things in the usual way. Whatever.
Mhm,
Uh, that's actually somehow what they now call toxic masculinity.
mhm,
So that's traditional masculinity somehow. Uh,
mhm,
and I can say, well, yeah, some of these attitudes and behaviors are bad for men uh, and for other people too, but I mean everyone else around, because generates a bad mood around, right? So stuff like that's irrational violence that may come, or jealousy, or assuming uh, that chores around the house, for example, and this is ridiculous because if you are a functional human being, you must be able to do chores around the house. Uh, so that kind of stuff, yeah, I do understand. They're like toxic elements of you being represented as a masculine man.
mhm,
But I got stuck into this because it's sort of a transversal to everything else today.
mhm,
So what exactly am I to understand is traditional masculinity, and why it collides with searching for mental health?
mhm, mhm. Okay, so I would say toxic masculinity is the extreme version of traditional masculinity. Because think of it, Jesus traditionally masculine, but I don't think a lot of people would say Jesus was toxically masculine. So that's kind of the idea there. So it's not traditional masculinity that harmful. It is it taken to the extreme. It is it taken to a rigidity that is becomes a universal application. It becomes toxic when it becomes social policy, where you are told that you have to be traditional masculine. But traditional masculinity by itself is not. Like I said before, like I don't think anybody like on either side of the traditional argument could say Jesus wasn't masculine. Jesus embodies qualities of kindness, of taking care of people, the shepherd, of treating everybody as equals, of hanging out with prostitutes and the poor. Like, you know? Um, so that would be the first point, right? Like, for talking masculinity as the extreme version, like isolated of the values that underlie traditional masculinity, right? Um, That doesn't mean that traditional masculinity doesn't collide with mental health, right? So the problem is that one of the characteristics that often is attributed to traditional masculinity is, well, there are two: independence and stoicism. For independence, I don't need anybody, I can solve all the problems by myself because I am man. Stoicism, the world is on fire, I show no emotion, I wear my dark sunglasses. Because that's what man is. You cannot show emotion. You are the one that has to be strong, right? This is great because it does have, again, like everything else, have a social function. So that's why it has persisted over time. The problem is that in 2025, not every man needs to have this social function. So people can choose that. Something that we have spoken about in previous sessions as well is the alienation of purpose, right? Freedom means also being free from purpose. It means that you have to find it again. You are no longer beholden to your destiny, right? So again, everything has its pros and cons, right? So the moment I say, you know what, I don't want to be a traditional man. I want to make my own sense of masculinity. Well, I just put on myself a really heavy task. And I just put on myself a lot of things to think about. That is not the easy road, right? So therapy enters into the scene because regardless of what path you choose as a man, you may at some point need help, right? The fact that society tells you that you are completely stoic and you don't need anybody else doesn't mean that's real. Society doesn't know you. We say this over and over again. Like, the other doesn't exist. So they do not know you. There's no one there to say, oh, you in particular have or don't have all the characteristics, right? Or you in particular have to be like this. So when any man, regardless of what nationality they embody, eventually fail because they're human, and they need help because they're human, that's where, in theory, therapy should come in and say, hey, you know what, you need mental health support. Humanity have developed therapy to support you. The problem is that the tools, well, not all of them, but a lot of the tools of therapy are developed assuming a certain level of verbal and emotional maturity in the person. Yep. This is therapy. The problem is that traditional masculinity did not assign emotional and verbal maturity to traditional masculinity. So somebody who embodies traditional masculinity, regardless of whether they are happy with it or not, odds are they will lack the verbal and emotional tools to take advantage of the tools of psychology. Or a lot of the tools of psychology. So again, this is not a Machiavellian plan by therapists or the patriarchy corrupting. No, like this is just the consequence of the way history happened, right? It is awful, but it is just the way it is. Especially here in the West. So that's kind of where the conflict is. It is a functional conflict. The way therapists are trained, the tools we are provided, and the way we are trained to apply them, they expect a certain level of you being emotional mature enough, you being introspective enough, you being able to verbalize well enough. Unfortunately, these are not characteristics that are expected in men. So a lot of men simply do not develop these characteristics. It's not that they can't, it's not that there's anything wrong with them. It's just that because society never asked you to develop them, you didn't. The opposite is true for women. Being good at talking, being good at navigating emotions, being good at handling groups of people, very feminine qualities. So women are expected to develop these skills. They are encouraged and rewarded for developing these skills. So they can much more easily take advantage of the tools of therapy. So that is why this is a problem. So this is a very fundamental practical problem. And it doesn't. And this is why it doesn't make sense to say, "Oh no, man, you have to learn to be more sentimental and have put your emotions to work." Motherfucker, if in 35 years you didn't learn, you're not going to learn in the 4 sessions I have for you because you're fucking AP. That's all they give us. Like, come on, and that's not realistic. Um. So yeah, I don't know if that answers the question about how these two things connect.
Okay, so you mentioned something that actually resonates with me, and it's not from Stoic point of view, but it's like its main course in martial arts formation. So I do remember, maybe I recall from my deceased grandfather, uh,
Mm-hmm.
hearing that self compassion is kind of cowardly,
Mm-hmm.
pitiful. Yeah. One of his
Mm-hmm.
Japanese karate masters used to say something like "switch face not" while struggling with anything. I mean, either it was while training or fighting, case any emotion was a sign of weakness. And
Mm-hmm.
you can understand that from the idea that in battle, showing emotion is actually a weakness. You'll
Mm-hmm.
get the idea from animals. Cats and dogs and those that are close to us tend to show no fear and no faces really during combat or confrontations in hunting. So
Mm-hmm.
later, I do learn that this is part of Bushido thinking, and it's related to the Five Ring book written by Musashi. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
these and other great teachers and philosophers talk about being man as somehow being alone. Then there you got this idea of the lone wolf, and this is set on literature and all kind of conflict. So we've come this far doing this. I mean, not really changing. And it's what 40,000 years of masculinity work more or less the same way. So
Mm-hmm.
why should we change it now? I mean,
Mm-hmm.
it takes us here.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So I would say two things. One, yes, your grandfather and Musashi, the guy you said, well, they were right. Yes, it is a sign of weakness. Absolutely. But that's because humans are weak. That is just part of being human. But yes, it is absolutely a sign of weakness. Um, and I think that connects to the second question. Why should we change that? We shouldn't. If it doesn't bother you, well, you shouldn't change it. If you are happy with that, you shouldn't change it. Again, remember what I said all along. The same way that I don't think we should have mandates one way, I don't think we should have mandates the other way. I don't think there should be a blanket statement that says, oh, everybody should do this. So no, I don't think you should change it if you don't feel like you have to change it. I would say, again, I would say that is very much like one of those like hand over your heart chat kind of questions where there has to be an introspective analysis of am I happy or am I not happy with this? Like, like an example that I have for this is Islam is one of the largest religions of the world, and it is very gender divided. I promise you, not every woman in Islam hates Islam. On the contrary, like most people here like their religion. Like you cannot force billions of people to do something they don't want to do. So like there is no reason why something should change, other than you don't like the way it is. That's the only reason why something should change. Um, the thing is, right? So when somebody else says, "But yes, I want to change all of this," yeah, that's just as equally valid because yeah, that's the only reason why something should change because you want to change. Um, I think, and again, the other idea of man being alone also very true. Like, I think this is kind of the same thing we have said about psychology. Like, these are descriptive, not prescriptive. They are not saying that because you were born a man, this is going to happen. They are saying that what they see is that being a man is being alone 2,000 years ago. And here we are in the loneliness epidemic crisis affecting men in the present, right? So I think this is very much a historical vision that this has been like with humanity and with men for a very, very long time. Um, I think kind of the idea here is, you know, Yes, but these were still warriors, part of a warrior caste. And what I mean with this is there was a community. They had to train with somebody. They had a master to teach them the skill. So there was community support. But again, this is separated from the emotional support. Right? So again, we see the same pattern we see today, where groups, tribes work, talking about their feelings don't work. We see that again through history, right? There are millions of examples of this. I think I don't know if this means that it has been fine all this time. Like I think we normally don't write about things that are just fine. So I think if you know from all this time, if Musashi has been writing about this, if this Japanese Bushido kind of philosophy has thought about this, I think it actually indicates the opposite. That it is part of being a man to think about what it means to be a man. That it is part of being a man to think, for example, what your relationship is to being a warrior. Because yes, this is part of human history. It is part of being a man to ask yourself what you think about traditional masculinity. Maybe you like it. Maybe you don't. But again, but all of these things should serve a purpose, which is for you to be happy. Otherwise, why are you asking all of these questions? Right? Like, why are you like? Well, yeah, you ask philosopher, you should agree that you can have fun with this, but otherwise, what's the purpose of all of these questions? If not to try to find peace and happiness for yourself. Again, think of sort of this idea of the perfected warrior, right? It is not somebody who is struggling and suffering. It is somebody who is at peace. This is true, and we have said this over and over again about all genders. The goal is not happiness, because I don't know what happiness is for you. The goal is peace. I can assure you, most people can find peace. So I think kind of the idea here is take sort of the lessons from history. Like I said before, like yes, Musashi is writing in the context of a warrior culture, not of a hermit warrior in the mountain on his own. Bushido is writing, or rather, Bushido concerns this path of the warrior that many warriors follow. It is not the warrior that lives alone and in the mountain and fights for the techniques. Bushido emphasizes transmitting the techniques from one generation to the next. It is the survivor who transmit the generation from the techniques, right? So I think, maybe in the present we have this tendency of when talking about different training of separating the cultural context and say, yes, I am the warrior. Okay, but there's a cultural context to being a warrior. There's a cultural context of belonging to a warrior caste, or belonging to a group of warriors, or being trained by other warriors. Sure, if you separate, if you leave all of that behind, and all you are is a warrior, yes, you are going to be alone. Because you left all the cultural things that were supporting the loneliness that they experienced through history. So that is kind of the idea, right? Again, we say this very often, right? Like, it's not that these are new problems that 2025 Joshua Santia are figuring out. These are things that humanity has struggled with its whole existence. But only now we have the means to sort of help more people realize that, yeah, you're not alone in these struggles. We're all in this together. So yeah, yeah.
So, no, then if it's that way, and I do agree with you on this situation that okay, if you're okay with this, why should you should change it, right? If you're feeling okay, if you're feeling happy, and the thing is, I see that some of these authors are actually kind of critic with this idea of traditional masculinity. So first idea is, why is this happening? Because I see a lot of people now struggling with the idea of masculinity. And I've seen it in students in school since they are kids, and especially during their teenagers. So, I mean, usually are these traditional men who actually keep some peer support on their friends. Yeah, you get your group of friends. Maybe you go around and talk and have some beers and whatever. And
Mm,
and I actually, well, felt that important presence of that kind of masculinity now that I'm living in the coast side of my country, because it's like
mhm,
more present here. But when I was back in the Andean region, it's kind of hard to actually meet up with your friends. So you end up in this situation of being alone. So nowadays, I can talk on behalf of other cultures, and I know it, but at least for what I see in my surroundings, and it seems somehow that those men are doing better than me for whatever reason it is, even if they're, I don't know, like less prepared or whatever you want to call it. There are these cultural differences, or maybe they are earning less, whatever it is. Okay, they seem to be
mhm,
doing better. Uh,
mhm.
so it looks like community actually is better than therapy. I mean,
Yep.
you don't actually need a therapist around if, as long as you've got a support group, maybe. That could be just
Mhm,
your friends. And but somehow they are also reinforcing these ideas that these researchers are seeing as harmful. So if we're not monolithic, as they say, uh,
mhm,
then why is it that it looks like the average Joe will get better in the same way? I mean, you take a date with your friends and have a couple of beers, and all of a sudden you're in peace.
mhm, mhm,
Yeah,
mhm,
happens. It has happened
mhm,
to me when I had
mhm,
the time to visit my friends and chat and whatever. I come
mhm.
peacefully back home and I can sleep easy. Maybe I have left my stuff in a chat, or maybe we didn't even talk. We just shared the space and the drinks, and
Yeah.
we
Mhm.
are peaceful now. But I got this in my nose that it's literally in my nose that
Yeah.
there are these
Okay.
people around that are like forcing these ideas of make create a therapy that is exactly that women took for men, and do exactly the same things, and talk about your feelings all the time, and don't know, do the journaling stuff and whatever, and you stay on that. And well, maybe let's go by parts. Okay, so why is it that as an average guy you can heal yourself actually by this means of just friendship and community, and that's it?
Mhm. So yeah, absolutely. You said it something that actually I think is completely true. Like community can replace therapy. Absolutely. Like for 20,000 years of human history, we didn't have therapy. We had community. So absolutely. If you have a strong community, you have a strong support, you do not need to go to therapy. Unfortunately, most people don't. Most people do not live in a healthy family. Most people do not live in a healthy community. Especially in 2025, most people have trouble finding a group of friends in their environment. So this worked for most of history because for most of history, you were forced to interact with your community. In the last 100 years, you no longer are forced to interact with your community. So it's much a lot easier to lose that community support. So therapy becomes, for those gains, important because of that. These are oversimplification of history, but that's what. So, but that's kind of just say yes. If you have community, you don't need therapy, and that's kind of the whole idea of this of today's episode. Um, the thing is, to 20,000 years of human history, there was usually somebody in the community prepared to provide this support. So yes, you didn't, as a warrior, didn't go to talk to a therapist, but you did go to get blessed by the shaman. You did go to have a prayer said in your name at church. You did have somebody in the temple talk to you about your concern. Somebody trained to do that. Somebody whose experience of life is doing that. So it's not that friends can do that. It is that most of the time our friends are in a situation similar to us. So they likely don't have a lot of mental space. They likely don't have a lot of preparation. And usually, alcohol there is also like a form of self-medication. So yes, it works. But this is kind of a survival strategy for those creeps together to be able to keep functioning rather than actually something that's therapeutic. But that doesn't mean that the therapeutic thing has to be therapy. It just means that you need to make the same space a bit more therapeutic. So maybe instead of getting drunk, we can go on a hike. We can go to the gym. I hate the gym. We can, I don't know. What do men do? We can play cards. Sure. We're not gonna get drunk, but let's play poker. Yeah, sure. Sure. Let's go to the movies. Let's play video games. Let's do all of these stuff. Let's eat meat. Let's have a barbecue. Right? Like that's kind of the thing there. So it's not that the masculine way of finding support is toxic. It is that because these are survival strategies, and we have again talked about a lot of what psychology do, usually these survival strategies are not the best because they are meant to help you survive, not to actually help you grow or thrive or develop or be happy. They are just there to prevent you from dying. Um, so again, I think this is a distinction that a lot of therapists don't make. Okay, because the two. In fact, you were talking about thinking about this. I think I said this myself a couple of episodes ago when I said that the only way to do things is by speaking. Yeah, that's me talking as a therapist trained as a traditional therapist. That is true in psychology. That is true in psychology. But when you start working with groups, you start realizing that no, that's not actually true. That there are other ways. Again, I have said it myself. Things like ritualization. Things like, again, we talked about all day about community support. You said it yourself. You don't have to talk about your feelings. Just being there, just feeling part of something, feeling supported, that's enough. Um, so I think this is kind of the key here, right? Like, a lot of these things are not bad by themselves. They are just bad in the current condition. Right. So if my only way to be find community is by going to my KKK group, to my Nazi club, sure, that's probably actually helping me be a more healthy emotional. It's probably not the best community that I could find, right? I could probably find a motorcyclist community that would be more healthy than that, right? Uh, that's kind of the idea here. So it's not that, again, kind of going to this main distinction that we have made today. Again, it's not masculinity that is toxic, it is the extreme of traditional masculinity. And this is the same. We're not away. What you said is true, first, yes. Community can replace therapy 100%. But it doesn't mean that there doesn't need to be some knowledge or some life experience or some guidance around that community to make it better. So, and like I said before, it doesn't have to be a therapist. Like we have had like people who take care of this through our whole human history. Sometimes even at family scale, you will have like a matriarch or a patriarch or somebody who, that's how I said matriarch first, a matriarch or patriarch who will be there to provide knowledge, wisdom, support, blah, blah, blah. A person who people ask for advice, right? So that's kind of the idea here. It's not so much about the thing that's being wrong. It's about being aware that a man and a woman are different. And if you are working on therapy, you need to take that into account. If you're a woman that has traditionally learned how to therapy is taught, you probably have a lot of biases towards working with, like I said, qualities that are traditionally feminine. So with traditional men, you may have problems. And again, you as a man, be aware that yes, if you went to therapy and they ask you to write a journal, you think that bullshit. Yeah, you're probably right. That's probably not something that's going to work for you. Try a group, try a support group, try a peer-led support group. I think the best examples of this are addiction groups. A lot of them are men only, and you really see how peer support can be more healing, more curative than emotional therapy.
You know, since we talk about community, I've been having these unease feelings of not belonging anywhere. And we talked of this, I think, about 2 times. And I'm not sure if that's okay. I mean, it's okay with me, right? 2 years ago, I do pass through formal therapy
Mm,
and work around my issues after losing my grandpa and my wife.
mm,
I was about 8 months working on me and reading and journaling and this day by day trying to unfold me. And I think I managed to determine my identity. Yeah? But
mm,
my belonging was self centered since there are no social norms that denies me right on caring principally about me, right?
mm,
Nobody will
mm,
tell me no, you shouldn't care first about you than others. So I think
mm,
I ended up too cautious, maybe a little paranoid
mm,
when
mm,
thinking of others.
mm,
So for me at least, I'm fine, but for the outside world, I
mm,
may be an outcast.
mm.
Uh, so should I actually get involved with a community that match my social needs? Am I to become furry now?
Hmm. But
Or
that's
a
the thing.
gym
I
bro?
think that's I think that's really a question for you. It's like, do you want to become a gym bro or a furry? Like, do you think your life would be better if you did?
I don't
Because
know.
that's the thing. Because that's the thing. A therapist may have answered that question for you. I say, yes, you have to. That way you have new friends. But that's not the right answer. The thing is not, answers do not help you in this question. But the question is for you. Like, do you want to do that? So that way, even if I am traditionally trained therapist or who grew up in a household full of women, it doesn't matter because I'm giving you the space to give me the answer. I'm not putting my bias on you. One of the reasons why at the Hill of Guilt, we have this active listening posture, this client first approach, where it is you who decides, and I through the hard questions. I really hear you chilling. So that's the question. Like, do you want to? Do you feel like your life would be better with a group?
Well, as I told you, I don't know. That's something I've been thinking about quite a while. Trust me, it's something I've been thinking at least for 4 years.
Hmm?
And from time to time, you get maybe a new group of colleagues or friends or whatever, and you
Hmm?
get along with them. But like everything nowadays has its time. So more or less like find your new video game, and it has its time. You finish, and
Hmm?
maybe it's over. It may have
Hmm?
some replayability, but that's it. There are also those games that you played once and you don't want to know about it anymore, even if it was fine.
Hmm?
So I can recall uh, some writing I did during my therapy and discovering this white knight syndrome, as it called.
Hmm? Yeah, I remember
Uh,
you mentioned that. Hmm?
and I was up to the game of writing and discovering. It was good for me. I actually got it, and I get involved in writing a lot. So I told you I finished writing something already. It has passed my first checking now. So,
Hmm.
but I'm sure that a more direct approach would have worked better. You know, so instead of
Hmm.
getting me just trying alone to find out, making me alone ask myself what was going on, maybe some what we just talked and what you just said, maybe some peers around, some experienced men would have give me like a better idea and never actually address loneliness or this lack of community. So what would help men? Well, we'll talk generally, but me also, what will help men uh, more effectively?
Mhm. I think there is something very important that you said there, and this is something that I have also seen very much firsthand in my career. And I have seen this across the board. Like I have seen this with groups about addictions. I have seen this with groups about family violence. I have seen these in groups about just emotional support. There is a lot of value and a lot of learning that, and I include myself there, like that men that we can do from older men. I think that because this is not a 2025 problem, this is a historical problem, a lot of men face these issues through their life. And a lot of men do this alone. So they have, again, remember everything we've said so far, right? Stress forces you to grow, right? So these men were forced to develop tools that now other men can use without going through all the pain to use all those tools. So there is an incredible amount of value of these multi-generational space where younger men can interact with older men. Uh, my experience has been that even when it's, I mean, we've talked a lot about like different traditional masculinities and different forms of masculinity. Even when there are like extremes of like extreme conservatism and extreme liberalism, once they are in the room, once they start talking about being a man, not about what I think about Trump, not about what I think about politics, not about what I think about the state, about being a man, suddenly connection happens. Suddenly the other guy is like, I used to be like, I thought that was what. Suddenly the young guy is like, oh, I see now why you think like that. I don't agree, but I understand why you think like this. And from this, growth happens. Because now we have all of these things on the table that everybody can pick what they need. At one point, I had to be like, oh my gosh, I'm so bored. I'm going to cry. No. Maybe I was sitting quietly on a corner of the room, watching all of this unfold, but that guy just said the thing. That guy just said the thing that I needed to hear. And now I understand it's okay to come to this group every week. That's the thing. So I think that's one of the things that I think we will even talk about prepare this episode. Like I cannot emphasize enough how useful community support is for me. But I also want to emphasize that it has to be the way like make what it to do. It cannot be community support the way psychology says it has to be. It cannot be community support that says the way I a therapist it says it has to be. It has to be community led. It has to be peer led. It has to be really built around the people, the men in that space. Because, like I said before, it's not going to be the same to have this intergenerational group at church that is going to have this homeless group of men at work, right? Like these are very different spaces. And yet, there are a lot of things that are similar among all of these men. Yet, the experiences of being a man from the homeless people are the same of these rich assholes at church. Like, turns out we all are very similar we said this whole thing as well. Like we are not that different as we like to think.
Yeah, completely. And since we're almost on question section, I do want to talk about this influencers issue nowadays that they are all telling you what to do to actually be a man, even if it's
Hmm?
a joke or not. Uh,
Hmm?
because I actually think that that's a big issue with us. So we need to be, yes, in community accord to find out what is best for us.
Mm-hmm.
But what we actually get is a community formed around a hero figure that is actually telling you what to do. So you don't get to decide at the end. And I'm starting to think, based on what we've talked so far, that it could be even more harmful at the end because you're not choosing for yourself.
Exactly. Exactly. It is exactly the same problem that we have the other way. Somebody else is telling you what to do instead of you asking yourself the question and finding the answer. Um, Again, that's why it becomes toxic because you are doing things that you don't want to do. It is harmful for you. And this is the same thing as toxic masculinity. If you are doing things just because you're supposed to do them because you're a man, that's toxic. That's harmful for you. you are not being free. That's kind of the opposite of what you're supposed to be as a man.
Well, yeah. So thank you, Josh, for getting us to know what's actually going on. I think the reason why these guys are actually getting so popular is because they're giving you an easy solution
Mm.
to something you
Yeah.
don't want to work out. And I know because
Yes.
it's
Yeah. Yeah.
hard, and doing during those 8 months in therapy, I do understood that looking around for what's going on in your head is shitty.
Mhm. Yeah. 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 Yes, and like I said, it also doesn't really answer to the reality of how men see the world. Like I said before, they like this is like a real example. Like there was this guy who was like this old traditional rough. Like he didn't even talk to me because he thought psychology was for pussy. He got a lot from the group. He would be there in silence every day, and he got a lot from the group because that's all he needed. He didn't need to be there sharing his experiences and telling others about his. No, he didn't listen. He didn't to see a world bigger than the one he had lived in. And again, if I had forced him, if I had said, no, 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 Mister Whatever, you have to, you have to share your story for today. Like, what do you mean you don't want to participate? No, no, no. If you don't participate, you can't be here. Probably
Destructive pressure.
that would have been the most toxic thing I would have been able to do.
Yeah, yeah, completely. So
Hmm?
let's get to some frequently asked questions on this topic, and let's see what the internet has
Okay.
to say about, well, what happens actually with therapy for men. So,
Mm-hmm.
why do many men avoid going to therapy even when they are struggling?
Mm-hmm. So we already talked a lot about like the psychological aspect of it, like how it relates to how men are expected to see therapy, how therapy itself doesn't always answer to the needs of men and to the abilities of men. So I'm going to give you some other ideas here. So that it has to be with money. Men have a different role in relationship to money in most cultures than women. So for a lot of men, self-care in terms of financial necessities will be further down the line. So I may send my child to therapy before I go to therapy. I may send my wife to therapy before I go to therapy. Because therapy is fucking expensive. So I'm gonna put the whole family in therapy. So again, there are these other things that maybe we don't always think about when we think about, oh, they don't need a crisis. But there are some very practical, real reasons why men don't go to therapy. If you are the breadwinner, your money probably is already earmarked for a lot of other stuff that you have been told is more important than you because you're a man. So you have to sacrifice and all of that. So probably very low on the list. Um, Another reason is that it is difficult to realize you are struggling. I said earlier about this idea of how society places emotional awareness or emotional intelligence as a feminine quality. So for a lot of men, they never learn how to become aware of their issues, and they never are told that they can be fixed. So there just isn't this like a space to say, oh, maybe what I need to do is go to therapy. Because they never learned that that was a possibility or that that is something that could happen. What do you mean talking can make me feel better? You said it yourself, it works when you are drinking with your friends. But what do you mean talking makes me feel better in therapy? No, that's for push. It does make you feel better. It's just that you are not correcting the dots. Because you have been told and gone. Talking is not marriage. Talking is not what women do. That's gossiping. Not what women do. Not what men do. So there are a lot of these other biases, these other stigma in many ways. These are stigmas that hold back men from seeking therapy or from seeking help. That there's a lot of judgment, external and internal. Like again, like I have had men who have told me their wives thought they were pussies for going to therapy. That's for women. Right? Like so there's a lot of stigma, a lot of judgment that also holds back a lot of men. So again, just because you are a man doesn't mean that you are immune for judgment, yet you're immune from feeling bad. Like you're a person like everybody else, right? So there are a lot, like I said, of reasons other than just what we spoke today that get in the way. Real practical reasons, money, stigma, family necessities. Mhm.
Yeah, yeah. Stigma, I do get a lot. I do got
Mhm.
on that time. So
Yeah.
let's go to
Mhm.
number two. Is therapy actually less effective for men, or does it just feels that way?
So we have talked about traditional masculinity, so now we're going to talk about traditional therapy. The way therapy is traditionally constructed, yes, it is less effective for men than it is for women. And again, like I said before, this is not like a machination of the different men. This is just the result of these tools relying on a set of skills and abilities that generally men are not expected or rewarded for learning. So I don't know, men simply need to got the best of those skills. So that's why they don't work as well for men. So yes. But it's not like I said, there is a complex reason why they go through therapy. That is a problem.
Not intentional, just happen to be that
Yes,
way.
exactly. Exactly. I mean, not, I mean, in not that it's impossible, like I said before. Again, a really good example. Because I grew up in a household of only women. Because I have been trained as a therapist and I developed the skill. Therapy with women works a lot better for me than therapy with men. Because I do like talking and thinking out using words. Which a lot of therapy does. So like, again, so when we say men and women, we are talking more about like personality, like actually physicality or your DNA, right? We're talking about this cultural masculinity and this cultural femininity, right?
Well. Number three, why do some men turn to online figures like you mentioned Andrew Tate instead of professional help?
Yes. So I think we could see this as another one of those survival kind of mechanisms, right? If I cannot find support anywhere, I will get whatever first support I find. And if everybody else tells me that either I'm a loser or that I am toxic because I'm a man, or that there's something wrong with me or whatever, and then this guy says, no, you're actually a good person. And these things that nobody else likes, no, they're actually virtues. Of course I'm gonna follow this guy and go with this guy, right? But I think we have to be very clear that this is a side and side kind of issue, right? Because yes, on one hand, the problem is other state telling you that toxic masculinity is the way to be happy. It's not. But it's also a problem of society turning their backs on men and not providing the things that other state is providing. So this is a more complex issue than saying other state exists, right? The problem is other state exists, and we have the cultural conditions that make men so desperate that other state looks like a good option. But that's kind of the situation. I really hope that as the world changes, things like the Hill Guild and other initiatives for those do their best to make mental health more accessible, not just for men, but for people in general, but obviously men. Clearly, I care about men. Um, I do hope that things will start to change. I do hope that young men will start finding more models in their communities than these alienating models that really just, again, they are like drugs, like at the first. Like they just give you the illusion. Because yes, other things don't actually tell you that you are a good person, that you are doing it right. So you are not really satisfying in that game. You're just getting like a dopamine hit. You're just getting like the drug, like the sugar booger. Like you are not actually getting something that is making you grow. You're not actually getting social support. You're just getting the illusion of social support in a video of entertainment. So in that case, going out with drinking with your friends, better support than the video. Because at least you are getting drunk and hang out with your friends.
That's kind of a next question. So, not kind of, not really the same. Number four says, are men only support groups or peer groups better than therapy?
I would say for traditional masculinity, at some of the times they are. So for men who identify with traditional masculinity are happy with that. For a lot of the times they are. I will say the opposite is true. For men who find themselves very far away from traditional masculinity, they also work very well. Because usually, like, if you are either extreme, you benefit from like learning from the other side. You usually find your place somewhere in the middle. But again, notice how all of these depend on a group, on peer support, or being there, right? So generally, I say yes. Um, Especially like I said before, if now I'm addressing the chatter or the viewers, especially if you think that or you have tried therapy before and it hasn't worked, if you just don't feel like it will work for you, try a group first. Try a peer support group of whatever illness ails you, and see how that feels. I honestly try a couple of ones because, like I said before, it also depends on the lead as well, right? On who's directing the group. But I think there is a lot, like I said, it will definitely gonna work worse. So definitely, there's no reason not to try. That's what I would say.
Good, good, good. Finally, we got this. What changes could make mental health services more effective for men?
Yes. Um. hmm. But the way I think about this, and the way I think about therapy as being more inclusive in terms of personalities and ways of being, actually comes from yoga. Um, there are different kinds of yoga. There's the typical kind of yoga where you're just like meditating and being introspective. There is the kind of yoga that's related to like divine worship and like worshiping your god. There is this kind of yoga that's centered around like intellectual and understanding the true nature of reality. And there is this kind of yoga that's based around praxis and around doing things, about serving in the temple, about volunteering, around. And the reason I like this view is that these are actually ways of supporting your mental health that are for the different needs, right? In psychology, we don't have this view, but yoga does make this distinction in that every one of these paths becomes toxic if you go too deep into it. So if you only meditate, you become isolated. You disconnect with the world. You become like separated, and that brings suffering, right? If you only worship, if you only put your hands on the divine, you lose your agency. You lose your sense of control in the world. You lose your feeling that you are like an active, cautious, talking, choosing being. If you submerge to power the intellectuality, you lose sight of what's important in life, of being happy, of your feelings, of yourself, of other people. If you're too far into action, you lose sense of the greater sense of life, of your role in the greater cosmos, in your greater community, right? I think therapy has a lot to learn from these perspectives. I think therapy has a lot to learn from offering solutions other than talking and understand. I'd say in 2025, understanding is actually the least useful. Information is out there. You can find the knowledge. Usually people don't need you to tell them stuff. You just tell them to Google. It is the other aspect that really benefit people. And I would say, if we think of it like this, I would say therapy could benefit from having more active approaches. Therapy for men, I'm saying, right? Traditional masculinity centered around doing things, about solving problems, about being the one that creates, that makes, that brings. I think that's one of the things that therapy could do better. Have more of these practices, of these practical aspects of change. Really centered around the person, right? Not as, oh, you fill in the journal and feel the sense of achievement. I don't fucking care about journal. What do you want to do? Like, what would make you feel achieved? Like, you as a human achieved something. Like, that's what I mean, right? Same thing with devotion, right? I think there is this. I mean, wait, not here in Canada, not so much, but definitely in New York and in Ecuador, there was this. Um, how do I say this? This like division, this like chasm in between like spirituality and mental health, right? And I was told in university, don't never talk about spirituality in church. When the client brings it up, anyway, in New York, kind of the same thing. I don't think that's necessarily true. I think that if the person has some spiritual belief, and that doesn't have to be a religion. Like a lot of people will say, I'm spiritual, but I'm not religious. Therapy accounting for that and making space for that is another aspect that will work for a lot of traditional men. Because traditional masculinity also linked to traditional Christianity, also linked to traditional beliefs. I'm thinking about Islam and Hinduism. So again, if we don't recognize this as a real part of the person in front of us, you are not working with the person in front of you. You are working with a vision that you want to work with because it's easier. So I think that's another thing that modern therapy could do. sort of give space to spirituality. Whatever that means for the person. Okay, so not the person, not me saying, okay, there are four currents of yoga, and we have talked about the first two. What do you tell me about your worship? No, go like that. Just giving it the space for the person to bring it up if it happens. Like a lot of, and these are PhDs have as well. Like a lot of people are scared to bring it up because there's a lot of stigma in 2025 around religion and spirituality. But that's another thing. I think what therapy could do is be more holistic. I mean, hippie 2025 word, but I think this is a very literal description of what I'm saying right now. I think therapy needs to become more holistic, to see the person as more than what psychology says you are, but seeing as the person. And what does psychology say about the person? So again, changing the order of things. The person goes first.
Yeah, we're in there. So hopefully, one day, people will come
One day
first.
that's okay. Finally, in the last 3 episodes, I didn't promote the company that we work for, but yeah, so that's kind of what we do at the Healer Field. This is one of the reasons why I founded the Healer Field, because this is a problem that I saw all across the board. But at the same time, it's not that we don't have the answer. Like social workers, like a lot of the things I learned and that I apply now as a worker and as founder of the guild come from social work. I just told you that all of my supervisors were women. They were also social workers, like literally all of them. And from them, I learned a lot of this client-centered, person-centered, look at everything. When my first job, we used to go to the houses. I was trained to look at everything in the house. Look at everything around you. All of this is the person in front of you, not just the human and what the book says. All of this is the person. Be aware of all of this. And I think that's really something that psychology and therapy can learn from social work as well. And not like I am not doing promotion anymore. And that's what we do at the Schiller Guild. This is why we work the way we work. This is why we approach clients the way we approach them. This is why this looks like a session, because this is a lot like what we do. Like, I don't answer your questions all of the time. Sometimes I think what's more important is that you ask the question. And that's kind of the spirit of the guild. It is not about the answers, it is about the questions. It's about you, about the person.
So, well, thank you, Josh, and we'd love to hear from you on the other side of the screen. Next week, we'll be talking about my path on career. If you
Yeah.
made it so
Another
far, please leave us a question. We'll try to answer as many as we can. So, Josh,
yeah. Another very manly topic to talk about careers and professions. So yeah, I'm looking forward to it. I'm looking forward to it. I think it's gonna be a interesting one. Thank
well,
you everybody for coming and thank you everybody for listening to this. Bye
now
bye.
it's your turn to take on what is best for you and your life as a man.
Take care.
Bye. Till next time.